At the beginning of the 20th century, leprosy wasn't primarily treated as a medical condition. It was treated as a social contamination problem. In Hawaii, once someone was diagnosed with Hansen's disease, the response was immediate and final. Patients were forcibly removed from their homes, separated from spouses and children, and shipped to Kalaupapa, a settlement on the island of Molokai. Steep cliffs on one side, open ocean on the other. No bridges, no roads. If you went there, you stayed there. Doctors said this was about public safety. What they did not emphasize was that the treatment barely worked. The treatment was chaulmoogra oil. It had been used for centuries in India and Southeast Asia. By the early 1900s, Western medicine had adopted it enthusiastically, mostly because it sounded scientific and had a long history. Unfortunately, it was a mess. Taken orally, it caused extreme nausea and vomiting. Injected, it caused painful abscesses and tissue damage. Applied topically, it did almost nothing. Doctors documented all of this. They continued anyway, because admitting failure was inconvenient, and tradition has excellent job security. People were being forcibly isolated for life based on a treatment that didn't work. That's the backdrop. Alice Ball enters the story here, and almost immediately solves the problem. Alice Augusta Ball was born in 1892 in Seattle. Her family was educated and technically skilled. Several relatives worked in photography and science-related fields. Precision and experimentation were normal in her household. She excelled academically. She earned degrees in pharmaceutical chemistry and pharmacy. She did not drift into science. She trained for it. By 1915, she completed a master's degree in chemistry at the University of Hawaii. She was 23 years old. She was the first woman and the first Black person to earn a master's degree at that institution, which meant two things were true at the same time. She was exceptional, and she was easy to erase. At the time, Hawaii's medical authorities were under pressure. Hansen's disease was drawing international attention. Forced isolation policies were increasingly criticized. But officials needed something concrete, something that looked like progress. Alice Ball was assigned to study chaulmoogra oil, and instead of asking how to administer it better, she asked the question no one else had solved. Why does this fail chemically? The answer was simple. The active compounds in chaulmoogra oil were fatty acids. Fatty acids are not water-soluble. Human blood is water-based. If a compound cannot dissolve, it cannot circulate. If it cannot circulate, it cannot treat a systemic disease. This was not a mystery, it was chemistry. Alice Ball isolated the active fatty acids. Then she chemically modified them to create water-soluble ethyl esters. That was the breakthrough. Now the treatment could be injected safely. Now it could be absorbed. Now it could actually reach infected tissue. And now, suddenly, patients improved. Not gradually, not ambiguously, consistently. For the first time, people diagnosed with Hansen's disease responded to treatment in a way that suggested recovery instead of permanent exile, which created a secondary problem. Because if patients could be treated, lifelong isolation stopped being medically defensible, and a lot of administrators did not love that implication. Alice Ball had solved a problem that had defeated medicine for centuries. At 23, while still in graduate school, then she died. Alice Ball died in 1916. She was 24 years old. The cause of death is uncertain. Contemporary records are vague. Some suggest illness. Others suggest complications related to chemical exposure. What matters is timing. She died before publishing, which, in academia, is the worst possible moment to die. Her work didn't vanish. It existed, solved, functional, waiting, and it was picked up by Arthur L. Dean. Arthur L. Dean was the president of the University of Hawaii. He had institutional authority. He had access to Ball's lab notes. He understood what she had done. And he made a choice. He continued the work. He published papers. And he renamed the treatment. It became known as the Dean method. Not a collaboration, not based on the work of. Just Dean. This was not a misunderstanding. Dean did not independently discover the solution. He did not identify the solubility problem. He inherited a working method and put his name on it. And the academic system accepted this without hesitation. The Dean method was administered widely. Patients improved enough to be released from Kalaupapa. Families reunited. Lives resumed. For more than 20 years, Alice Ball's chemistry was standard medical practice, under someone else's name. Medical journals credited Dean. Institutional reports credited Dean. University histories credited Dean. Alice Ball disappeared, completely. Which is impressive, considering her chemistry was still being injected into living people. This wasn't passive forgetting, it was structural convenience. Ball was young, she was black, she was a woman, she was dead. And she had never published. There was no professional cost to ignoring her. For decades, no one corrected the record. Then, in the 1970s, someone finally checked the archives. A researcher named Catherine Takara examined Ball's thesis, lab notes, and timelines. The problem became obvious. The chemistry was Ball's. The method existed before Dean published anything. The credit was wrong. Institutions adjusted slowly, carefully, without enthusiasm. The treatment was eventually renamed the Alice Ball method. The University of Hawaii acknowledged her contribution. A plaque was installed. A medal was named. All very respectful, all very late. Now for the epilogue. So what happened to Arthur L. Dean? Nothing. After Alice Ball died, Dean continued publishing the treatment under his own name. It remained known as the Dean method for decades. During that time, Dean stayed president of the University of Hawaii. He published. He advanced his career. He built a reputation. In 1927, he left Hawaii to become president of the University of Wyoming. No inquiry followed him. No correction caught up with him. No public challenge appeared. Dean died in 1934, still credited for a medical breakthrough he did not originate. The correction came decades later, in the 1970s, after archivists traced the work back to Alice Ball. By then, Dean was long gone. His career was complete, his reputation intact. There was no reckoning, no apology, no revision while it mattered. Alice Ball's name was restored only after it could no longer inconvenience anyone who benefited from its absence. That's the ending. Not justice, not irony. Just the historical record doing exactly what it usually does. If this made you pause, you might want to follow.